It is UFC 309 fight week, and we are welcoming a very special guest to break down the card and talk about all the things going on in the MMA kind of sphere right now with Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall, and Stipe Miocic. Welcome back, Kevin Iole I. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Joey. Thanks for asking me back. I appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, man, it's crazy how much time has flown by. I was just looking at it before we jumped on here. It's already been 2.5 months since I had
Wow.
you on. I don't know where that time went. I got nothing but positive feedback from having you on the channel. So I want to thank you again for coming on again.
Of course. I
So
appreciate you having me, of course, helping me out.
yeah, no problem. Anytime, man. Anytime. So UFC 309s this week. There's a lot to discuss. We're going to break it all down, but I want to start off by saying this. I found out since the last time you were on the channel, you were nominated. I believe it's the International Boxing Hall of Fame. So I wanted to say congratulations on that. How did that feel to you?
Well, it's pretty incredible. I am not a big person on awards and things like that, because I kind of feel like as a journalist, that's not what we're in it for. We're in it to get the news and information for the public that we serve. But when you look and you think especially in boxing journalism, the great writers that there were over the years, I mean, some phenomenal writers, and to say that I will be in the same kind of thing with Jim Murray and Jerry Eisenberg and people like that, like, oh my God, like, I never thought of myself in that realm, and I never will be in that realm, but just to even be nominated, what an incredible honor that was.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool when I saw it, and I just wanted to mention it on here because I know it's been
appreciate
a
you.
little bit, but that is awesome. I know, it's got to feel great after the years of work you put in. Now, I want to jump into this UFC 309 card. I don't know how much of media day you have seen. There's a lot of kind of viral clips going around of Jon Jones talking about Tom
Yeah.
Aspinall, and we're going to get in. We'll talk about predictions here, towards the end of this video. But what did you make? Did you see the clips today of Jon Jones saying, Tom Aspinall, he's kind of an asshole. I don't even want to do business with him anymore. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I was really surprised that Jon said that, right? I mean, I think Jon comes off looking bad in this whole thing, right? And if you don't want to fight Aspinall, why even say it, right? Why not just, hey, look, I'll talk to the UFC after this fight's over, but I'm focused on fighting Stipe Miocic. I think that's the answer, right? If you want the best PR and you want to look good, hey, I'm focused on the guy that's considered the greatest heavyweight champion of all time, and whatever's next, I'll talk to Hunter Campbell and Dana White, and we'll figure it out. And then if it's Alex Pereira, you can blame them. Hey, that's who they offer me, and I'm fighting, and that's what's going on. I don't understand. Jon kept saying today during the thing, I think you can understand my side of it. And I was like, the more he talked, I'm like, no, the less I understand it. Right. Like, I don't think he's afraid. I wrote that in my column the other day, and, a lot of people jumped to that conclusion. He is afraid. I don't buy that. I don't think that that's a really cogent argument, but I think, Jon wants to dictate and he doesn't understand what he's trying to dictate. I think when you look and you say Alex Pereira or Tom Aspinall as an opponent, well, the better fight is Tom Aspinall. Aspinall has a ground game. So if the fight goes to the ground, we don't know what's going to happen. I think we pretty much know what will happen if the fight goes to the ground when he's fighting Alex Pereira, right? I mean, even though Alex said, hey, I have a good ground game and I'll surprise you. He told me that when I was talking to him about fighting Magomed Ankalaev. Hey, let's be honest. Jon Jones is one of the best grapplers in the history of the UFC. And he's going to take Alex Pereira down if they fight, and he's going to grapple with him. And I think we kind of have an idea how that will go. If he fights Aspinall, he takes him down. Aspinall's a black belt whose father was a jiu-jitsu instructor from the time he was learning jiu-jitsu. Aspinall's big and quick, as Jon mentioned at the media day today. He's 30-some pounds bigger than Jon. He is shown to have good striking. I think to me, that is the better, more intriguing fight. People are getting caught up in Alex's knockouts, but they're not thinking of how the two fighters match up.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually I haven't made a video on this yet. Obviously, this happened early today. I'm going to make a video on it later tonight. So this is the first time people are hearing kind of my take on it. I understand to a certain extent what Jon Jones is saying, but I think the arguments that he's making or the statements that he's using to kind of cement his argument don't really make a whole lot of sense. Like he says, oh, Aspinall hasn't beaten any champions. The only champions available to him would be Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic. So it really doesn't make sense at all. And then it's like, well, what has he done? And I understand that he doesn't have this crazy body of work, but he has a decent body of work. And then it's like, well, what about when Shogun gave you the opportunity? And I seen somebody today actually asked him that, and he was like, well, he does deserve it, but it's just, I deserve a lot, as much as I've been around, I deserve this and that. And I really think all this could be avoided if Jones kind of said what you said. Look, I haven't been offered that fight. I want to fight Alex Pereira. And I do understand the argument. And I've been trying to explain this to people, but fans, they're always one side or the other. There's no nuanced discussion in the MMA community a lot of the times. Yeah. But what I've tried to say that's been considered in defense of Jon Jones is, and this is what I believe he should be saying, and I think he is kind of saying it to a certain extent, is there will always be the next guy. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it with Jones. No matter what Jones does, there will always be the next guy. If he goes out and beats Aspinall, Jalton Almeida maybe gets a win or two in the meantime. And they'll be like, oh, he's scared of Almeida. Previous to Aspinall beating Pavlovich, it was like, oh, Pavlovich is the guy to beat Jones. There's always going to be that guy. And I understand where Jones is coming from. But to then say, well, this guy hasn't earned it, or this guy doesn't deserve it, or this guy's an asshole, it makes it look so much worse than it should actually be, because it makes it look in the fans' minds that he's scared. And I'm with you, Kevin, 100%. He's not scared of him. I would actually pick Jones over Tom Aspinall. But it's weird that we have this dynamic where it's Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic fight week, and the entire discussion is, oh, is Jones scared of Tom Aspinall? How do you think the UFC feels about this? I'm very curious. What do you think from a promotional standpoint? You've been following it for so long. What do you think they make of this whole situation?
Well, I think you would have Dana White's opinion, and then you would have the rest of the staff's opinion. And I think the rest of the staff is going nuts, right? They don't like this, right? And they would like him to be talking about, hey, Stipe Miocic is the greatest fighter, the greatest heavyweight ever, and I can't wait to fight him, and blah, 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 blah. And instead, you have Dana's take on it is going to be, hey, you know what? I believe they're going to fight. I'm talking to Dana tomorrow as we record this. It's Wednesday. So on Thursday, I'll be talking to Dana, and I'm going to pose that question to him, right? You've been saying that he's going to, you think that Aspinall will get a chance to fight the winner of Jones Miocic. Miocic told me no. And Jones is basically saying he's an asshole. He doesn't want to fight him. So, what's going to give? But I think Dana's like, hey, they're talking about our fighters. They're talking about our event. That's good. And that's how Dana will take it. So I think, the staff is probably freaking out because they want to focus on the actual fight going on. I think Dana's going to look at it, in a way that's like, hey, as long as they, kind of like what they used to say in politics, spell my name right, and I'm happy with whatever you say about me.
Yeah, basically they're probably looking at it. Any publicity is good publicity, right? It's going to help sell the pay-per-view. So I've been trying to formulate my own opinion on this as we've gotten more information from Jones. And it really all started with the interview you did earlier this week with Jon Jones. I feel like that was kind of the tipping point of the beginning of this Jon Jones, Alex Pereira saga. I know we talked about it a little with Aaron Bronstetter as well. But I'm very curious of your opinion. And again, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what I believe is going to happen. I think I have an idea now. I do believe if Jones beats Stipe on Saturday, I do believe he pushes for that Alex Pereira fight. It does make sense in terms of it's going to be massive. The UFC is going to want to keep Jones around. If that's the only fight he's willing to take, I'm curious, what is your opinion? If Jones beats Stipe, operate in that hypothetical world, which Jones beats Stipe, I know a lot of people are picking Jones to beat Stipe. Gun to your head, do you think Jones versus Pereira would happen next?
I think it's going to depend on how Jon feels about his performance against Stipe, right? Jon got a lot of praise, and he is driven by public praise. Believe me, he is. And if he feels like he performed well against Stipe and is happy with that performance, I think then he can't pass up the payday that Alex brought. But if he kind of feels like, it was a Dominic Reyes, Thiago Santos type performance where, this happened, that happened, I wasn't, and if he's making excuses afterwards, I think that'll be it for him. So I think, we can't get inside his head, but that is my sense that, he's going to be, motivated if he performs well against Stipe. But if he doesn't, he's going to say, you know what, I've done all this for, he's been in the UFC since 2008. So for 16 plus years, I basically, for all intents and purposes, undefeated. I'm going to walk away on top. And that's what he'll do if he's not happy with his performance.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in agreement with you. I think no matter what happens, regardless of the performance, it's a good performance or bad performance, I believe Jon Jones will fight again. It's a matter of when. If it's a bad performance, maybe he sits out, takes some time off, relinquishes the belt, and then 2 years from now, you know how MMA retirement works. Yeah. You know how it works. It's never for real. So I feel like that could happen. But honestly, right now, as we sit here, and again, I haven't really thought about it in depth enough, I think if Jones beats Stipe fairly clearly, I feel like he's really going to push for that Pereira fight. And then I wonder, and I think the UFC will make it. At the end of the day, if it's Jones versus Pereira or Jones retired, I think the UFC is going to see the money signs there and be like, you know what? We have to make this fight. We can't miss out on this opportunity. And I feel like they're going to make it. But then I'm wondering what happens with the heavyweight division. I don't know.
And the light heavyweight division.
Yeah. And that's another thing I want to point out. And I know we're spending a lot of time on this main event, but I find it funny the amount of criticism that Jon Jones has gotten for not fighting Tom Aspinall. I understand part of that is self-inflicted with kind of some of the things that he's saying. But for me, whether it's the UFC's fault, whether it's the individual fighter's fault, I've been very vocal and disappointed in the fact that we're not getting Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev, regardless if the Roundtree fight was good or not. I know people were like, see, it was great. That means it made sense. For me, I'm always on the side of meritocracy and wanting to see the guys on the long win streaks. So I find it kind of funny that, a lot of fans and a lot of media are really on Jones's case, but they're not the same for Pereira versus Ankalaev. And if Jon ends up fighting Pereira, and I don't know if you've seen Pereira posted on social media today. Did you see a social media post?
No, I didn't see what he said today.
So he posted a picture of Dana White holding up the BMF belt, and he tagged Jones and Dana White and said, let's make them wait. So he's already playing into it. And I just feel like I know Jones and Pereira will be a mega fight, but the fact that it'll hold up potentially 2 divisions is just a massive catastrophe for the sport in general.
Well, the UFC owes Alex something, right? So, I mean, from Alex's standpoint, I think they would love to see, he saved their asses how many times, right? And I mean, not only did he save it with where they didn't have a main event and he took the main event on short notice and all that stuff, but he also saved it with his performances, right? When you link back and go, oh, I didn't really like that Alex Pereira fight. Like there's none, he goes in there and he destroys guys or he gets destroyed. Right. But I mean, it's not a thing where you say, yeah, that wasn't a great Alex Pereira fight. So I think on the one hand, yes, they want to make that fight. But now what do, right? Dana said if the Ankalaev Rakic winner would get the title shot next. Dana has been all along poo-pooing. After UFC 300, I wrote a column and said, hey, you know what? Alex Pereira has done so much for the promotion. Give him a fight at heavyweight. And Dana, no. Dana was against that, right? I quizzed him at the press conference about that. He was against it. And he's talking about the size and there are different size guys and everything. So, then that would make you think they would want to keep, the Ankalaev fight alive, right? He clearly beat Rakic, no question about that. And he's got, what does he have? 6 or 7 knockouts in the UFC. So it's not like, he has not been a worthy challenger. I think the one thing hurting Ankalaev is that Blachowicz fight, and not even so much the fight, even though I know they weren't happy with the fight, but they were really unhappy with his reaction afterwards. I'm quitting the UFC and all that. Like that was not what they wanted. And even though they will deny it, if you say it, I think they hold that against him.
Yeah, that's just, that is genuinely sad that I just feel like recently, and maybe it's just me because I've always leaned towards meritocracy over everything else. Like I know sometimes there's a gray area, but to see potentially two deserving contenders not get their shot for some kind of bizarre fight, I think it's a travesty. But also, I do think, and I'm going to get your opinion on this as well. Jones has said, "Oh, I'll relinquish the belt, and we can fight for the BMF belt," or he called it the BAMF belt. I don't know why he pronounced it that way. It was very bizarre. But I find it hard to believe. If I sat here right now, Kevin, and I told you Jones versus Pereira is next, do you find it hard to believe there's going to be a world where that heavyweight title is not on the line? Because I just can't imagine a world where the UFC would say, "Okay, relinquish the belt and let's make this fight."
That is what makes any Alex Pereira fight at heavyweight bigger, that he's going for become the first 3-belt champion, right? That is the hook in that particular fight. Because, the experts are going to look at it and say, well, Jones's wrestling is just going to shut down Pereira. It's not, it's not going to be this slugfest like we saw with Adesanya or Roundtree or whoever else, Yuri Prohaska, Jamal Hill. It's going to be a wrestling match. And Alex Pereira is not a guy that we want to see wrestling. So I think if you're going to try to sell that fight, the hook is Alex Pereira can make history by moving up. The BMF title. I mean, first of all, you're going to take it from Max Holloway. Like, what did he do wrong, right? Max Holloway won the title, and he should have the right to defend it if that's what he chooses to do. And there's a lot of great fights for him at 155. But then on top of that, I mean, the BMF title doesn't carry the same weight as the title. And so, knowing that Alex clearly won the middleweight championship, he clearly won the light heavyweight championship, and now you're going to say he's going to get a shot at the guy who holds the heavyweight title, but we're not going to put the title on the line. That loses just a lot of the luster. So I don't think they'll do that. I think it will be if that fight gets made, it will be a heavyweight title fight. Maybe they throw the BMF title in there to try to make it a 4-belt thing, right? For Alex, if he wins it. But I don't see any universe in which that fight occurs and it's not for the heavyweight championship.
Yeah, I would agree. I just can't imagine they would do this massive fight and not have the heavyweight title on the line for that fight. Now, I want to get your prediction. You said you're okay with giving predictions out. I want to get your prediction of how do you think Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic goes down? Who do you think wins this fight? How do you think it plays out?
Well, I gave a pick out on my channel today. I did a betting thing on the Tyson-Jake Paul fight and some UFC 309 picks. And then I actually picked the over. That was what I picked. Now, I think Jones wins the fight. But I think Stipe has the style to cause Jon some trouble, right? Stipe was a college wrestler. Is he as good an MMA wrestler as Jon? No. Stipe is a great athlete. Is he going to be as quick as Jon? Probably not. But Stipe no doubt has an edge in power. And I think just in pure striking, if it was a kickboxing fight, we would say that Stipe has the edge in hands. Now, the question that you have to wonder is he's 42 years old. How much of his athleticism is left? And the fact that he hasn't fought in, 44 months, I think it is, that makes you go, So I think Jones wins the fight, but I stayed away from when I was going to recommend a betting play. Jones is like minus 650, minus 625, something like that at last I saw on DraftKings. I don't want to lay that kind of money when you just don't know for sure, right? If it was a 2-1 favorite, I would recommend Jones, a play on Jones. But at 6-1 or 7-1, and it's been as high as minus 700, I saw. I can't recommend Jones, but I think Jones wins the fight. I think he will find a way to control the where the fight is fought. I think those kicks are going to be really dangerous, and I think Jones wins the fight. But I think it's going to be a long fight myself.
Okay. Well, here's my breakdown of this fight. So when you went into Jones versus Cyril Gane, I was very confident that Jones would beat Cyril Gane to the point that I got so much criticism looking back at it. It's hilarious because for me, Jones always fights to the perceived level of his opponent. Like every time it's like, oh, this is the guy that's really going to beat him. It seems like that's when he has his best performances. And that's where I think the Stipe fight's a bit of a trap fight because regardless of what Jones wants to say publicly, there's no way you can't let that outside narrative kind of seep into your mind a little bit. Like, Stipe's old. Stipe's been out for this long. Stipe got knocked out in his last fight, and that was 3.5 years ago. So in a way, I think Jones could come in maybe a little bit overconfident, coming off a long layoff, which, his last fight only lasted a little over 2 minutes anyway. And then he could come into this fight and maybe Stipe shocks him, because Stipe is great. He's a great fighter, but we don't know, because he's kind of a question mark a bit.
Right.
But here's where my breakdown, it really hinged on this. If Stipe is in his prime, if he's the best Stipe that we've ever seen, say the third Daniel Cormier fight,
right,
and Jones hasn't regressed significantly, I don't see Stipe Miocic winning this fight. That was kind of my breakdown on the fight, because, I feel like they're both kind of question marks at this point because of the inactivity and whatnot like that. But I just feel like, unless you're hinging on Jon Jones, he had the injury, he's been inactive, he's going to have this huge fall off, and he's going to take Stipe unseriously. But I don't think that's going to happen, just because he does have a lot on the line. Because now, think about the way he's acted towards Tom Aspinall. If he loses this fight, think about how bad that's going to look for him. That's going to look horrible for him. So I feel like you take all that into account. I actually feel like Jones gets a finish rather early. I think probably first or second round finish. I think you definitely see him throwing some 12-6 elbows. I think you look back at DC. I don't know if you remember how much you even watch older fights, but I believe it was the second fight. DC took Stipe down in the very first round and really beat him up on the ground a lot. And then DC kind of started to fatigue. And then, Stipe started throwing that body shot. I'm sure you remember that part of that fight.
Those body shots were huge in that fight.
Yeah. And I just feel like if DC is doing that, and I know DC is an Olympic wrestler, but look at the way Jones matched up with him in the wrestling. I think Jones is a bit of a freak with his wrestling. I just find it hard to believe that Stipe has, increased his skill set over the past few years, and the layoffs has been good for him. So my pick for the fight, I think it's going to be a Jon Jones, like mid-second round TKO on the ground with his grappling, with his elbows. And I just think you can't doubt Jon Jones at this point. A lot of people, I don't know if you've seen online, a lot of people are cherry picking his resume and say, oh, he beat up Shogun, he beat up Rampage, he beat up Leo. People don't remember who weren't watching then. You can vouch for me. I'll let you vouch for me here in a second. Those guys were amazing at the time. Those were great performances. People were questioning, can Jones beat this guy? Against Shogun, it was kind of short notice. And I remember Lyoto was a tricky style. And it was, Gustafsson in the rematch after the first fight. He's going to get him this second time. You can vouch for that, right?
Oh, that's 100% true. And I'll also say this. I was there for Shogun Lyoto Machida, the rematch when Shogun won the championship. And I had Machida winning the fight 3-2. It was, and a lot of people had a 3-2 for Shogun. And those people just were ripping me. Shogun's the greatest, rah, rah, rah. And they were ripping me because I thought Machida won the fight. And now all of a sudden they're saying he wasn't at his prime when he fought Jones. Both can't be accurate, right? I mean, so Jones just, yeah, you're right. I mean, he's kind of had that career where, Rampage was on the downside. Everybody picks apart everything in retrospect. What were people saying at the time that these fights occurred? I think that's what you have to look at.
Yeah, I've been getting so tired of hearing that this week. People are like, oh, he beat up middleweights. That's the one narrative that I keep hearing. And I'm like, if you weren't around for that time period, you can't truly grasp the wins that Jones has on his resume. Like, whenever anybody asked me about BJ Penn, I came into the tail end of BJ Penn's career. So I'm like, I really can't speak to how great of a lightweight or welterweight that he was, because I didn't really see it. And I feel like you're seeing a lot of that with kind of the Jon Jones naysayers, and then Jones kind of throwing fuel in the fire by saying, oh, I'm not fighting Tom. I'll relinquish the belt. It's just making it worse because of course people, want to attack him. Now I want to discuss the card as a whole. I'm curious from a media perception, from your perspective, how do you kind of grade UFC 309? Like, do you feel like Jon Jones, Stipe at the top of the card, no matter what, it's going to do good media-wise and numbers-wise? I'm very curious. How do you feel about this card as a whole?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to do a big pay-per-view number. Normally, a Jones fight would do a fairly decent number. I don't think it's going to do a huge number, but I think in a weird way, all the talk about Jones, ducking and everything, some people are going to tune in because they want to see him lose and Aspinall, come in the ring after the fight, or if he wins, to see Aspinall go nose to nose with him, right? And see how And I know Aspinall's in New York. I don't know if Alex is planning to go to the fight. He was at Plinio Cruz's, but I think I saw he got on a plane and went to Malta or something. So I'm not sure that Alex is going to be there. That would be interesting. What the UFC would do if Jon won and then both Alex and Tom tried to go in the octagon afterwards. That might be a telltale sign which one they let get in there. But I don't know. I'm not sure exactly where to go, but I think the main event is not going to sell a lot, right? Even though Jon Jones is there. And the rest of the card, it's not one of their better cards. I don't think, I know, was it you were critical of the card? I'm not sure if it was you or somebody else that I saw. Like, I don't agree with the devastation that's been laid upon the card. Like, I think the Bo Nickal fight is an interesting fight, right? Now, the odds are going up and up and up. Nickal didn't look that great his last time out, at least by his standards, right? Maybe by a guy in his second or third UFC fight, he looked really good in that fight. But by his standards, he didn't look that great. And now he's taking a step up against a guy that beat Ankalaev, that beat Jamal Hill, and and everything, and has that great jiu-jitsu. I think it's set up for Bo Nickal to win that fight. There's no question about it. But I also think that, hey, it's not a gimme like you see in so many boxing matches, right? Where they feed him somebody that, he's going to win. I don't know it's a guarantee that Bo Nickal wins that fight. If Bo Nickal loses, is it one of the 5 biggest upsets in UFC history? By the odds, it might be, right? Because I think this morning I saw it was minus 1100. That might make it one of, just by the numbers, make it one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. But I don't know in reality it would be. So, what else do we talk about the card? The women's fight on the main card, I'm a little surprised that that's in the position it's in. I think that'll be a fun fight for as long as it lasts. But I don't know that's a fight that a lot of people are buying. Chandler and Charles Oliveira is going to be a fun fight, right? That fight, especially if Chandler fights the way he says he's going to fight, which is batshit crazy. And that's how he always fights. So, I think when you look at the card, there's intrigue in the main event because of all the controversy Jones has created. You're going to have that co-main event that there are stakes on that fight. And I want to say this, Joey, I want to hear what you think. I am not so certain, given his record in the UFC, he's 2-3 and his wins are over Dan Hooker and Tony Ferguson, that if Mike Chandler, as much as I like the guy, if he beats Charles Oliveira and becomes 3-3 in the UFC, does he deserve a title shot off of that?
Here's what I'll say about that. The answer, the simple answer is absolutely not. I don't believe a one-fight winning streak, no matter who it's against, is really worthy of a title shot. But I feel like you have to kind of look at the layout of the lightweight division. And right now, if Islam fights Arman in January, February, whenever that's going to happen, it's going to happen early 2025, it appears. Then, if he beats Arman, who's the next contender? I guess Dan Hooker's kind of making his way back up the ranks. Dan Hooker already fought Islam if Islam wins. So as much as the answer to that question is no, I don't believe he should get a title shot. If he beats Charles Oliveira, a former champion, and there's who else would you give him? You're not going to bring Topuria up because if I'm the UFC, there's no way I would risk Topuria losing to Islam. I think Topuria is on a trajectory that's insane. So it's like, I guess the UFC could say, Chandler, we kind of feel bad for him. He's been sitting out for all this time, waiting for Conor McGregor, 17 training camps. He beat Charles Oliveira. I can see them justifying it. And for me personally, even though I'm always meritocracy, one thing that I'll always say is, look, they gave Adesanya a title shot and people said, Joey, you're not in an uproar about this. And I was like, look, there's no really 100% deserving contender at the time. Who am I supposed to cry for? Who am I supposed to say? So while I don't believe he does deserve a title shot, if he beats Oliveira, and you give me your take on this, and Islam beats Arman, unless he's going up to 170, but Bilal still has the belt, so there's that there. What do they do with the lightweight division? You tell me, what do you think they would do with the lightweight division in the event Chandler won against Oliveira? Who would be the next title contender?
The one thing that they have, and I think, is they have the benefit of time, right? So Islam and Arman are going to fight in January, probably in Los Angeles. So that fight happens. They have 2 months, right? So I don't think they make any commitments. Dana always likes to say you don't make fights on the night of the fight. And I think that's going to be his answer after, Chandler is the one saying, I will fight for the title next. But you do not hear, Dana or Hunter saying that. And I think they're going to look at the benefit of the time. So they'll have fights that go on in the interim. I agree with you that there's nobody sitting there that, that is screaming and saying, I deserve the shot. I deserve the shot. But I think that they're going to take the benefit of time to look and say, okay, because they don't even have to make the decision after Islam and Arman is over. They can wait until February and so basically give them 3 months to say, all right, because we know Islam's not going to fight during Ramadan, and Ramadan begins in March in 2025, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So,
yeah, for sure.
Islam doesn't fight during that month, so you have a long period of time. Islam's next fight, if he fights in January, which I expect that to happen, will probably be June or July. Maybe International Fight Week. So they have time to make that fight, and they can allow. And so I think that's what they'll do. I gave you a long-winded answer saying I think they will wait until they absolutely have to make a decision, and they're going to not guarantee anybody anything.
That makes sense to me. I didn't think that Dana's going to come out on Saturday night if Chandler does win and say Chandler's getting the next title shot. He very rarely ever does anything like that anyway. And I want to get your prediction for the co-main event here in a second, but I want to ask you this. I've been highly critical of Michael Chandler sitting out and waiting. And kind of my main gripe, even though maybe sometimes I'm a little bit too harsh, is he's waiting on a fight that really doesn't it doesn't seem like it's going to materialize. That's what I've been saying that since very early 2023. I don't believe that this fight happens. And then he's been kind of guaranteeing fans, and I think it's part of his kind of personality in general, right, like the positivity and like, I'm going to manifest this, to quote Israel Adesanya. And I just think it was a horrible decision. But now that he's got the Charles Oliveira fight, if he can somehow win that and get a title shot, maybe it's not all, a total loss. But I do think wasting that 2 years of his career in his late 30s at lightweight was a kind of a really big mistake. But the question is this. Do you think those 2 years off for Chandler, kind of waiting around, was a huge mistake career-wise? And do you think that the Conor McGregor fight could ever materialize even after this Charles Oliveira fight?
I think the problem that Chandler had is the same problem that Dana White had. He didn't know what the hell McGregor was doing, right? So there was two issues with McGregor. Number one was his health, and he wasn't healthy enough when they signed to do the Ultimate Fighter. Conor was not anywhere near healthy enough to fight. He had a surgery in there. I don't remember the date of the surgery, but it was a second surgery after that first one, right? So he needed a recovery time for that. So then all they have to wait and see, okay, once he's declared healthy that he can train, then, how does he feel when he gets into training? And then, when do they bring him back? Obviously they got close because he was supposed to be back, and Conor, now think about this. Conor goes on June 1st and with a broken toe, and he says, I'm pulling out of the fight. Think of what Conor did at when he was supposed to fight Jose Aldo. Aldo pulled out. Conor had the major knee injury, and that he fought anyways, right? That's what Conor did, and now he's not going to fight with a broken toe. I think that, Joey, tells you the problem that both Michael Chandler, his management team, and the UFC had. Nobody knew what the hell the guy was doing, right? Plus, on top of it, he was partying and he was on the yacht drinking, and there was all that question, is he ever training? So Chandler was kind of in no man's land. He wants to rely on the UFC to give him advice, and the UFC is going, I don't know. And so he was just in that bad spot. I think it worked out for him. Now, I did a story today, and I used my interview with him as the basis of this, where, he said his plan for 2025 is beat Oliveira on Saturday, fight Conor in March, fight Islam in June or July for the title, and then fight Max at the end of the year, having Max won one fight and then for the title, and they would have the BMF and lightweight titles at stake. Obviously, the likelihood of that is about as much the likelihood of me getting in there and fighting the winner of Miocic and Jones on Saturday. But that, Chandler dreams. And you know what? I love guys that think big, right? He believes that. If he was BSing me, I would rip him, right, for that. But he believes it. And he has that, and that, he's, I'm going to win these fights and this is what's going to happen. So God bless him for that. And I would rather have somebody do what he's doing and say, I want to fight McGregor, Makhachev, and Holloway than what Jon is doing and saying, yeah, probably don't want to fight Aspinall.
That is true. At least, he has some big aspirations. I think also he kind of want to make up for lost time for, the last 2 years or so. That being said, he believes this. Okay. He believes he's going to win. He believes he's going to fight for the title. What is your breakdown of the co-main event, Oliveira versus Chandler? Because in my opinion, I think Oliveira is too good everywhere, man.
Yes.
The striking seems like it gets better every single fight out. He's nasty on the ground with his jiu-jitsu and submission ability. He's nasty in the clinch. He has durability. He uses his jiu-jitsu on the feet. Like I always talk about it. I feel like nobody ever mentions this. Oliveira uses his jiu-jitsu as striking defense in a way. Because if you notice in the past, he'll get clipped with a big shot. He drops to his back. And there's very few guys that are willing to jump down there and follow him down there to try to get a finish. Islam Makhachev has, I just sit there and butcher his name trying to say it correctly because you told me last time. But I'm very curious how Chandler gets it done. Do you think Chandler can get it done against Oliveira?
I don't. I think the matchup really favors Oliveira. And Chandler, I thought, kind of got fortunate in that first fight, right? With him that he didn't get finished in the first round. And I just think Charles's grappling is going to carry the day here. He does have the striking. If we believe Chandler and that he is going to fight smarter, then he's going to, he's not going to go throwing bombs with him. And I think Charles will be fine with that. Charles will be happy to get the fight to the ground and then take his chances. Michael might be able to hold him down for a period of time in the fight with his wrestling and his physical strength. I mean, I don't know if you have seen, recent workout clips of him or photos. He looks in amazing condition. So I think, he might be able to hold Charles down for a while and hold him off. But Charles is so good off his back and he has so many variations of submissions. Look what he was doing. He almost came back and stole that fight against Sarukian at UFC 300 with that grappling, right? And, so I just think that Charles's grappling is, right up there with anybody in the UFC. He's a finish machine, and I think he'll find a way to submit Michael Chandler in the fight.
Yeah, I think he finds a finish, probably first or second round. I also think, everyone always says Chandler needs to fight smarter, and I do kind of agree with that to a certain extent, but it's been his style his entire career. Like, right. I don't know, the moments that he has of success, whether it be against Dustin Poirier or Oliveira or Gaethje, I don't know if he ever finds any of that success if he's not that aggressive, go out there and try to bulldoze you type style. I don't know if he finds those moments where everyone's like, oh, he needs to kind of fight a little bit smart. I don't know if he's ever going to find the success that he finds. And, he's been this close so many times to finding a finish against Poirier in the first round, finding a finish. I think he hurt Gaethje in the first round. I'm not sure on that. Charles Oliveira, we know for sure he almost found a finish in that first round against Oliveira. I just don't believe a kind of tempered back, smarter Chandler, fighting potentially at range. I just don't see how that kind of matches up with a Charles Oliveira who's super defensively responsible, super well-rounded, amazing finishing ability.
And he can fight anywhere.
Yeah, I just don't see how Chandler gets it done. Now, before we get out of here, okay, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
I was just going to say one other thing. I think, I compare this to basketball, right? If you're in high school and you play pressure defense all over the court, right? You can force turnovers, and if you have the right team with a lot of quickness, you can destroy the opposition team. But you notice that they don't do that in NCAA Division I too often, and they certainly don't do it in the NBA because while it may lead to one turnover here or there, it leads to a lot of fast break baskets and dunks at the other end. And that's kind of how Chandler fights, right? Chandler's like that pressure fighter. He's in your face. He's trying to force turnovers. And while sometimes, like in the first Oliveira fight, Charles made a mistake and Chandler got his back briefly. I think for the most part, the elite guys are kind of like those NBA players. They know how to beat the press, and they'll find a way to grab his neck and get something and finish him.
Yeah, I agree. I think Oliveira gets the finish. So the other fight I really wanted to ask you about, you touched on it a little bit when you were talking about the pay-per-view, Bo Nickal versus Paul Craig. I think this is obviously a setup fight for Bo Nickal, but we know how dangerous Paul Craig is on the ground. And I feel like this could be one of those fights on Saturday night where we're kind of laughing, but the UFC and Dana White's kind of like, oh, well, Bo, he got caught in a submission. I feel like if he loses, he's going to get subbed. And they'll say, oh, well, he submitted Ankalaev. Look where Ankalaev is at. He submitted Jamal Hill, went on to become a champion. Do you think there's any chance that Paul Craig pulls it off on Saturday?
I think he's a lot better of a choice than, what is he, plus 700, I think it is, right? Minus 11 plus 7, I think is what the line is. If I were to have to put my money on it, I would bet Bo Nickal. But I think the UFC looks at this. They don't really care if Bo Nickal wins or loses this fight. Would they rather he win? Yes. But I think they feel like he's a developing fighter and he's pushing to fight these high-level guys, not them. They would rather have him fighting contender series guys and, kind of guys at the bottom of the roster and move his way up until he's ready to be fighting the Khamzat Chimaevs and everybody of the world. But this is what Bo Nickal wants to do. So I think they feel like, hey, if he loses to Paul Craig, what does it hurt us, right? It doesn't really matter that much because everybody knows what Paul Craig was, and he got that experience of being in there with somebody. But if he beats Paul Craig, look what that does on his resume and when he goes out next time. Now, the only problem with that philosophy is if you beat Paul Craig, where do you go next? Right? Because now you're limiting the amount of opponents that you can put him in there with, right? So obviously you beat Paul Craig, you're moving up. And now you're starting to look at those, as Dana likes to say, full-blown killers. And I think that, so I do think Paul Craig has a chance to win this fight. I said that before. I'll bank on it. If I had to bet my money, I would bet Bo Nickal, but I would not bet that with any kind of certainty.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm going Bo Nickal as well. I think Paul Craig could have like a shocking upset. So just to clarify, you're going Bo Nickal, you're going Charles Oliveira, you're going Jon Jones. We're on the same page, Kevin. One last thing I want to ask you about. This doesn't have to do with UFC 309, but Bo Nickal kind of reminded me of it, and I wanted to get your opinion on it. What did you make of Khamzat Chimaev's performance against Robert Whittaker at UFC 308? Because I thought it was an amazing performance, and I thought it was worthy of a title shot. And I want to get your opinion on whether or not you think the UFC would make that next, Du Plessis versus Chimaev.
I thought it was an amazing, incredible performance. One of the best performances in a big situation that I've seen in a long time. I mean, he really stepped up his game. There was some disappointment with what he had done, against Usman. I don't know why there was disappointment because Usman is a tremendous fighter, but there was some disappointment with the way he fought against Usman, and people were starting to doubt Chimaev. And Robert Whittaker was in phenomenal shape. By his own admission, hey, if I lose this fight, it's on me because I am ready to go and I'm ready to perform at my best. He looked great against Ikram Aliskerov, and Chimaev just made him look like nothing. And so to me, I think it's worthy of the title shot. Like I've always been a kind of a sucker for Khamzat Chimaev since he came into the UFC. I've been going, oh my God, this guy is this unbelievable combination of wrestling and strength and punching power. I think 100% that he deserves it. And if you saw my interview with Eric Nixick, he kind of alluded to that, right? He brought that up as, hey, that's something that we're worried about. So it'll be interesting to see. That is a question I will ask Dana when I talk to him on Thursday, and hopefully we'll get some clarification on that.
That'll be awesome. And I agree with you 100%. I think he should be next in line. And I do believe the UFC would be missing a big opportunity if they don't make Du Plessis versus Chimaev next. Kevin, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to link your YouTube channel and website down below. Anything else you want to shout out? He's doing an interview with Dana White tomorrow. It's Wednesday night. I'm not sure exactly when I'm dropping this.
Yeah, I got Bo Nickal on Thursday morning, and then I've got Dana White Thursday afternoon. And I don't know what happened to Aspinall. I was supposed to have Aspinall this week, and so far he's a ghost, so I don't know what's going on. Apparently Aspinall's ducking me.
Yeah, Aspinall's it's because of that Basset Hound. I'm telling you, number one pound for pound, Kevin. Well, anyway, thank you, Kevin, for joining me. If you want to shout out your social media real quick, you can.
I am Kevin Iole on Instagram and Facebook, and I am at Kevin I on my good old favorite place, Twitter.